Okay, so this video is for the Abu Garcia fans, particularly the Revo fans. Now, last year Abu Garcia pretty much revamped their entire lineup, but nobody really knew about it because they didn't really give us any kind of ICAST previews or leaks or anything like that. And it looks like, with the exception of the new Revo Rocket, it's going to be the same this year as well. So for some reason Abu Garcia doesn't see the need to give us a lot of previews and leaks and kind of get the fans hyped up for their new products at ICAST, which I think is a shame. Okay, so let's get started. Now the first reel I'm going to go over is the new Revo AL-F. And this reel, just from looking at the specifications, it looks like it's pretty much the exact same reel as the AL-X, which is being discontinued, but it has one change, and that change is that they are going to the Infinity Dual Brake system instead of the Mag Tracks, which I can understand. I'm not really a big fan of the Abu Garcia Mag Tracks. Sometimes they perform really great, but a lot of times they are really finicky. It might be due to that linear magnetic design, but it looks like Abu Garcia is solving that with the AL-F by giving it the dual Infinity brakes, which are the centrifugal and the magnetic system. Now, everything else looks to be the same weight, the same ratios, all the same different specs, but it does have a slightly different color. As you can see, the spool's the same, but they've just given it some red accents. So yeah, there we go, the Abu Garcia AL-F, and it's going to be priced the same as well at $249. Okay, so the next reel is for you Inshore guys, and that is going to be the Inshore version of the very popular Revo X baitcaster. Now, the specs show that it looks like it's going to have actually one less ball bearing, but it's going to have 3 of those ball bearings as the Abu Garcia HPCR bearings, which stands for High Performance Corrosion Resistance Bearings. And that is pretty much Abu Garcia's version of Shimano's SARB bearings, which, if you see my videos, you know those are extremely high performance, high quality bearings. And the other change that I see, as you can see, is obviously got a blue handle and some blue accents, and they bumped up the handle length to 95 millimeters. And I don't know if they've done anything else internally to make it suitable for Inshore versus the standard Revo X, but it's gonna have a $30 more price tag. So this is gonna be $129.95. So I'm not sure if that handle and those bearings are going to be worth $30, but for you Inshore guys who fish a lot of salt, you know better than I would, so it may be worth the extra cost for this model if you're fishing salt or brackish water. Okay, so the next reel that looks like Abu Garcia is introducing this year at ICAST is the all-new Revo Generation 4 Beast model. Now, they've done quite a few things to this reel versus the previous one, and let me go over the changes that I see. Now, the first thing you can see is that it doesn't look as good as the previous model. It doesn't have the shiny titanium coated side plates of the previous model, and that's kind of a bummer. As you can see, it's got this kind of dullish gray, dark gray, matte color, which doesn't really stand out like the previous one. But because of that, the prices went down to only $280 versus the previous one. It was $350, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. Okay, so let's go over the improvements that this new one has. Now, somehow they bumped up the line capacity for this new beast over the previous one. It's going to have the capability of holding 310 yards, I believe, of 20-pound braid, while the previous one only held 235 yards. So that's a lot of line capacity right there. And it says 240 yards of 12-pound mono, while the previous one could only hold 180 yards. So I don't know how they're going to accomplish that with this newer, smaller frame, but somehow they said they did. They've also bumped up the gear ratio to 7.3 versus the old one, and they've also bumped up the drag by a lot. So the previous one only had 22 pounds of drag, while this new one they've given it 30 pounds of drag. So that's a lot of drag for a low-profile baitcaster. And the weight is about the same. They're both at about 9.5 ounces. So, you know, this is heavy duty. I suspect that both side plates on this are going to be aluminum as well. But everything else looks to be the same brake system, the same detour gear design, etc., etc. It's going to have the dual infinity brakes, the titanium coated line guide, etc., etc. So there we go for all you, I guess, big fish hunters for muskie and whatnot. The new Revo 4 Beast is coming out. Okay guys, the next reel is the all-new, brand new Revo 4 Rocket. Now this is the only reel that I've seen leaked previously to this coming Ike'S, and they're making a big deal about one feature, and that feature is that this is the first reel to have a super fast 10-to-1 gear ratio. That's kind of crazy. Now when the first Revo Rocket came out, I believe it was the first one to get a 9-to-1 gear ratio, and since then a couple of other manufacturers like DAIWA, I believe, and KASTKING released their Speed Demon that had the 9-3-to-1 ratio, making that one technically the fastest gear ratio. Now I guess Abu Garcia, you know, they wanted their crown back, so they've given this a 10-to-1 gear ratio, giving you 41 inches per turn of the crank handle. So I'm not sure how that's going to speak to the cranking power of this thing. I don't think it's going to be able to handle, you know, deep diving cranks too well. So the applications for this super high speed reel probably going to be pretty limited. Now it looks like everything else is pretty much the same. The weight's the same, the price is the same at $299. Actually the drag went up from 12 to I believe 18 pounds, and somehow they've also went up on the line capacity for this thing as well. It says 175 yards of 10-pound and 145 yards of 12-pound. So I see this as being a good reel for topwater. If you want to just really bomb a topwater out there, you need the line capacity. But yeah, the new Revo 4 Rocket, I think all these are scheduled to be available sometime in September, so it's going to be a couple of months. But yeah, the Revo 4 Rocket. Okay guys, it's time to get into detail about the reel that I'm most interested in out of all these Revos, and that of course is the Revo Ike, or Revo Ike for short. I've given you guys a little bit of information about this reel in a previous video, but I've found out a lot more information, so let's go over it right now. So just looking at the specs that I see listed on this page, it looks like, I should say, the specifications sound very familiar. Let me go over them with you. The X2 Craftic alloy frame, power stack carbon matrix drag system, D2 gear design, Duraclutch design, gull wing side plate design, compact bent handle and star, loop port, 10 stainless steel ball bearings plus 1 roller bearing, so that's 11 bearings, C6 carbon palm side plate and aluminum handle side plate, Duragear brass gear, Everslick coated pinion shaft and pawl, IVCB 6L braking system, Infinity 2 spool design, titanium coated line guide. So if those specs sound familiar to you, then that's because this thing is basically a Revo STX with the cool chameleon paint job, carbon fiber handle, and those EVA power type knobs, and of course purple accents. So I'm not sure how I feel about that because I'm kind of lukewarm on the Revo STX. It's got great potential, but it's disappointed me a couple of times as far as like its performance. So if this is basically just a Revo STX with a fancy paint job and handle and knobs, I don't know. Well, I should say I can't resist that paint job, so I probably will pick one up at some point. But I do hope that Abu Garcia has lightened that spool up a little bit. You know, give us a little bit more for our money. Now, speaking of money, this thing is going to be $250, so $50 more than the current STX, but I think it would be worth it just for that paint job and that carbon fiber handle. So there's a ton of pics released that I found on the Revo Ike, and that kind of segues into the next reel, which is also a Revo Ike, and that is a Revo Ike spinning reel. So it appears that Abu Garcia is also coming out with about 4 new spinning reels at this ICAST, but I'm only really interested in going over 2. And of course, the first one we're going to go over is that Revo Ike spinning reel. Now, I believe it's going to be called the Revo Ike SP20. Now, I don't know too much about spinning reels, especially Abu Garcia's, but and there's not really that many pictures of this Ike spinning reel, but the couple that I have, you can see that this thing looks pretty badass with that chameleon purple paint job. And as you can see, it also has a carbon fiber handle. Now, these Abu Garcia reels kind of have a mix of Shimano and DAIWA design cues, as you can see with that circle with the 3 bolts on the opposite side of the handle, copying DAIWA spinning reels. Also the angled spool lip, copying Shimano's spinning reels, and of course they have their own little design cues as well. Now, I'm not into spinning reels, but this thing looks so badass that you know, that may change in the future. Now, this thing is going to have a 6.2-to-1 gear ratio, 10 ball bearings, 11 pounds of drag, I think 120 yards of 8-pound line. It's going to weigh 6.8 ounces. It's going to retail for $230. So that's pretty pricey for a spinning reel. But the next reel I'm going to go over is going to cost even more than that. So a lot of you know that this year at Japan's fishing shows, Shimano and DAIWA simultaneously released their top-of-the-line spinning reels. Now it looks like Abu Garcia is also doing the same at ICAST, and they are coming out with the Revo MGXtreme spinning reel. And they wisely priced it way below the Shimano STELLA and DAIWA EXSENCE. This thing is going to cost $400. Now that's still a lot for a spinning reel, but considering it's about $300 to $350 below the Shimano and DAIWA reels, I think that's a smart move by them. Now, as you can see, this thing is pretty slick looking with the black and red. That's going to have a C6 carbon body. I think that's one of the reasons why it's going to be cheaper than the STELLA and EXSENCE. And it's got a lot of detailed porting there. Carbon fiber handle and a cork knob. It's got 11 ball bearings and 1 roller bearing. What they call AM gearing system, always on instant anti-reverse, rocket line management system. I guess that's their version of Shimano's propulsion spool lip. one-piece X-Mag alloy gearbox. So I guess some of it is C6 carbon, while some of it is going to be made of metal. And the part that's made of metal is probably the most important part, which is the gearbox that holds the gears. But other than that, that's the only information I have on it, and that pretty much covers what I found out about what's coming out for Abu Garcia at this year's ICAST. And I'm sure they're going to have a ton of other stuff, like a whole bunch of different rods and other reels and that I don't know about. But yeah, that's what I know so far. Alright guys, thanks a lot.